Hello, my name's Mandy. Welcome to my channel called Mandy Sorts It Out, where I sort out things. I sort out clutter and I'm sorting out my spending. And today is a review of my spending over the last week. And we'll start with looking at the budget. I'm going to pop it up here. I've rearranged my budget this week, and those are council tax, electric, water, rent, broadband. They're all relating to my housing. Then I've got my annual expenses: car insurance, car tax, car MOT, car service, dental, spends on others, travel to Bristol monthly, travel to son, travel to friend. I travel to see that particular friend once a year, and I travel to see my son once a year. The reason that there are figures in the monthly column and the annual column for travel to Bristol monthly is I've set myself a budget of £60 a trip with the idea that I will do 12 trips in the year. But I don't want to budget for that on a monthly basis, because some months I will go twice to Bristol and some months I won't go at all. Just how it happens. I thought I was going to do 2 trips in July because I delayed going down until the beginning of July because of the heat. I wanted to go when it was a little cooler. And then my great nephew is visiting his mother at the end of the month, and I thought I would probably be going back to see him within the same month. But as it happens, it's worked out better for me to go at the end of his visit, which is next month. My last 2 annual expenses are visits to friends and clothes. And then I've got monthly expenses. And the monthly expenses are the ones that I particularly focus on because they're everyday spending, really. And I try and keep those well under budget, because that's the thing I was really overspending on before. And that is my phone, which is a pay-as-you-go phone, toiletries and cleaning, supplies, food, petrol, and incidentals. Incidentals, I allow myself £50 a month, and it's for all those things that you don't really budget for. So it could be anything. It could be a gift, because although I have spends on others in my annual spending, that is really restricted to some spending on some children's birthday presents and spending on cards for adult birthdays and at Christmas. And so any other gift spending has to come out of my incidentals budget. And also things like if I go for a coffee or go for a meal out, that has to come out my incidentals budget. I'm not a big eater out because I have a lot of food restrictions, so it works for me. And then I've got some miscellaneous expenses. They're miscellaneous because when I first did this budget, although I included the content insurance, I didn't include it in the app I use to do my calculations. And then I remembered about the 365 basic fee, and I remembered about the power of attorney fee, which will come due at some point. So I just added them in one pot called miscellaneous. And let's have a look at how well I did on my spending this week. So I shall pop this up as well, so I'll try and keep to the right. So for July 8th to the 14th, the first thing I do is I list all the spending I've done for the week, whether it's monthly spending or annual spending. It all goes in that top bit. And I've spent £189.34 this week, and I had income of £6.50, which were 2 vintage sales, one for £3, one for £3.50. I did get 8 first class stamps this week as well. I talked about them in my last budget video. The things I spent on, my housing expenses, my electric came through, my water and my broadband, that came to £121.31. Then I had £7.16 I spent on cards for various birthdays. So that came out my gifts budget. I spent £4.50 on some trousers from a charity shop. That came out my clothes budget. But I'm going to return them. I hope they do returns. I'm going to try and return them. If they do returns, that will come off. They're just much too small. I wanted to buy clothes that were a bit too small, but not completely too small. These are completely too small. I don't know if it's small for the size or if I was just being a bit hopeful that I would fit in that size, but whichever, they're going to be no good to me for quite some time, so I thought I'd return them. Then I bought various incidentals. I paid for some parking when I went into town to do this shopping in the charity shop and other places. I bought a gift for a friend that is not one of the gifts that's allocated to the spending on others budget. So it comes out my incidentals, and that's £3.09. Then I bought a notebook, and that was £4.89. And I went everywhere looking for what I wanted, a kind of notebook that I wanted, and I couldn't find one, so I eventually got this from Amazon. And that £4.89 included postage. And I thought it wasn't a bad deal really, because I was looking for something quite specific. Then I have got toiletries and cleaning of £5.84, and that was buying laundry liquid and the little pods. I think the pods are a thing I'm not going to buy again, but I don't know, I just thought they were a good price, so I went for them. Then my food spending, I spent £1.29 on a drink when I was in town because it was so hot I couldn't last without a drink. I should have taken water in. I just thought, I'm only going to pop in, I'm not going to be in long, I won't do it. I'm only expecting to be in town an hour. Then various bits of food for £2.69 at groceries from the co-op. I walked down to the co-op to send a winter parcel, and it was so hot. I didn't go until like 7:30 at night, and I thought by then it'd be cool enough, but I was dying by the time I got there, so I bought myself an ice cream to have on the way back so that I wouldn't get too hot. Then I've spent £1 on chocolate. It was a Dubai style chocolate, quite a small one, and I've been so curious about what Dubai chocolate would taste like. I don't know if this was going to be the same because it was in a wafer, but it was really lovely, I have to say. Worth the £1, but I wouldn't probably buy it again. And then I spent £34.42 on shopping. I don't think I've got receipts for everything. The parking was an online payment, so I don't have a receipt for that. Right, then we move on to the monthly spends, and these are specifically those monthly spends identified in my budget. So food, petrol, incidentals, toiletries and cleaning and phone. And for the month of July, for food, I allocated £108 for the month, and I've spent £55.75, which is over half. I have £52.25 remaining. I'm not too worried about that though, because I did a big shop today and I bought some things that should keep me going for quite some time. I was thinking ahead because I've got a friend visiting me next week. So I was buying some things in preparation for that. Petrol, my budget's £35 a month. I've spent £16.94 and I've got £18.06 remaining. Incidentals, my budget is £50 a month. I spent £9.73 and I've got £40.27 remaining. My toiletries and cleaning, I had budgeted £23 for the month. I spent £17.58 and I've got £5.42 remaining. My phone, for a budget of £5, I've spent nothing, still got the £5. So I've spent, out of £221 budgeted for the month, I've spent £100. How crazy that it's exactly 100. And I've got 121 remaining. And for my budget for the entire year, from 1st of May this year to 30th of April next year, I haven't spent any of the budget for visits. That was £300. For travel is £980. For dental, £150. For car, £1,133. Or miscellaneous, £151. But out of my budget for clothes, £100, I've now spent £4.50 and have got £95.50 remaining. Just a reminder, I'm going to take that back, hopefully. For gifts, I've got a budget of £730. I spent £65.07, and I have got £664.93 remaining. For my trips to Bristol, my budget was £720 for the year. I've spent £119.59, and I've got £600.41 remaining, which is almost exactly £60 a trip because I've done 2 trips. My housing costs, I had a budget of £10,968. Most expensive thing of that being my rent. I've spent £2,642.93 of that so far, and I've got £8,325.07 remaining. And for the annual roundup of my monthly costs, I've got a budget of £2,652, which is 12 times £221, and I've spent over the year £416.30, and I have £2,235.70 remaining. Also, I looked at my electric today because the bill came and my payment went through, and I've got £69.31 in credit on my electric bill. And finally, let's talk about income. So my income from the 1st of May is £4,759.87, which is thankfully a lot more than I've spent, which was £3,248.39. I think I'm going to book the flight to travel overseas to see my son. I think I'm okay to do that. I'm a bit worried that most of my expenses might congregate in 1 month or 2 months, and I might end up spending more than I get in, but I do have savings and I'm prepared to loan money from those savings if necessary, with the idea that I will pay it back as the months go on and I get more income in. This is all reliant on my income staying steady, of course, and well, nobody ever knows about that. Nobody knows what's around the corner, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. I've been trying to decide whether or not I buy an oil-filled radiator for the winter, because in this flat I'm going to move back now, I have storage heaters, electric storage heaters, that turned out to be extremely expensive to run. When I moved in, I didn't realise this, and I just turned them on and was busy sorting myself out, and about a week after I moved in, I got on the app to see how I was doing, and I was absolutely shocked because I was spending about £7.40 a day on heating, on my electric, which is mainly heating. And I wasn't hot. It was tolerable. I couldn't walk around in a t-shirt. I was wearing my winter jumpers. So I turned the heating down and then eventually turned one of the storage heaters off completely. But luckily there was an improvement in the weather, because this flat gets very cold. I don't think it's very well insulated, and it does get very cold. So I was thinking about next winter. If I do put the storage heaters on, I know not to put them up to the maximum. I know to expect that I will just take the edge off, really. But the thing about a storage heater is I'm not going to leave the storage heater on while I go away, if I go away for a few days. And so if my trip's down to Bristol, for instance, and if I come back, you can't just turn a storage heater on and it heat the flat. It doesn't work that way. It has to be on overnight to build up to heat the flat. So I'm thinking that an oil-filled radiator might be necessary to get me through the days where that happens, where I haven't had the radiators on overnight and it's either surprisingly cold or I just need a little bit of top-up heating. I do have a fan heater, but it heats me up, but it doesn't really heat the room up. So I'm thinking I might put some money in the budget to get an oil-filled radiator so that I can manage my heating costs during the winter without it going crazy, without it being hideously expensive. But I haven't quite made my mind up yet. I'm still debating it. So thank you very much for watching. I will now post up my receipts for anybody who wants to have a look at my receipts for my spending for the week. Okay, thank you. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.